I would love to get your initial insights of the Stablecoin conference. Did you get any surprises? What are your general takes, like key messages?
I would say this was probably the highest signal event in Latin America.
Bitso right now, it's owning a lot of the narrative in the region about stablecoins, about pushing crypto adoption.
Personally, I do believe, and unfortunately, that the incumbents have so much power and so much leverage that I think that it's going to be really hard for startups to win the global game because stablecoins are fairly straightforward.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Frontera, the podcast where we analyze the most important crypto news in frontier markets and also some other frontier technologies. I'm Mav, co-founder and CEO of Bando. I'm with my great friends Kush, founder of Odyssea, and Simon, head of growth at Alliance. So, guys, how are you? Where are you this time? Last time you were in New York, Simon, and you were, I think, in Ecuador. Kush, so where are you guys?
I'm back in Portugal, back home where I live, in Ericeira, a nice little surf town, 30 minutes away from Lisbon. Despite the fact that I'm moving to New York as soon as the visa gets approved, if it gets approved, let's see. But yeah, back home here, trying to get back into my routine. Yeah. What about you, Kush? Where are you now?
Simon, it looks like you just went surfing.
Yeah, it looks like it, but I didn't. I actually just played tennis
Nice.
earlier, and I woke up early. It's been a long work day. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm in Mexico. We actually did friends/team offsite. So 6 of us came here to just come and hang and build, work out. It's been super fun. So can't complain.
Yeah, amazing. So today we have a couple of super interesting topics. The first one is we'll chat about Bitso's stablecoin conference. We'll give you all our input. Kush and I were both days there. We threw a closing party, a VIP dinner. It was a great experience. I think it was one of the best crypto events in Mexico's history. So kudos to Bitso for doing it. Also, in some news in Mexico, Binance is gonna invest $53 million in Mexico, and they just announced the acquisition of a company. And I will share a lot of insights that I personally know for being in the market for 10 years, working at Bitso, seeing why are they doing it, and also some news on Venezuela and the U.S. government. I think that some polemic things are happening around this area. So, guys, let's start. And Kush, I would love to start with you. I would love to get your initial insights of the Stablecoin conference. Did you get any surprises? What are your general takes, like key messages of the Stablecoin conference?
I would say this was probably the highest signal event in Latin America, perhaps ever, frankly. So it was organized by Bitso. We've been partners for the Stablecoin conference since day one. The audience was really corporate, really institutional, really focused on how do we ensure that crypto gets into the hands of people who really need it. There were a lot of sort of payment layer folks at the conference as well. Both you and I had the opportunity to moderate some conversations too. So, again, overall, I think there was super high signal. I'm curious, like your takes on it, and I know you were interviewing a lot of people there and so forth. So, I'd love to hear more about it from your side.
Yeah, for me, it was really special because the conference was like the venue was 5 blocks away from my childhood home. In between meetings, I went to visit my mom, literally. I went to have lunch with this VC, and we ate lunch like 2 blocks away from my house. So I said, okay, take care. I visited my mom, and then I came back to the conference. So it was like just picture that. Imagine the place where you were raised now hosting stablecoin conferences. That's kind of crazy. So it was kind of, well, really emotional for me. And my key messages are that Bitso right now it's owning a lot of the narrative in the region about stablecoins, about pushing crypto adoption, and I'm really proud of it. Also, the conference for me felt like a high school reunion. because a lot of people were just like hugging a lot of the Bitso people. I worked there for 3 years, so I don't know. I know a lot of people there, and also because of Espacio Crypto and everything we've built, a lot of the builders in the community are also friends. So it felt like really familiar. And some of the key messages that I have is I moderated a panel about emerging markets, and I did two like interactions with the audience. The first one is I asked for people to raise their hands if they've already implemented some stablecoins, and less than 30% of the audience raised their hands. So this means that a lot of people were actually in the like in the stage hearing the speakers. It was not like the classical crypto conference where basically the stage nobody cares about it and people just want to go to side events. So there's a lot of real demand right now for stablecoins in an institutional level. And the second one is that I asked, raise your hand if you know who Vitalik Buterin is. And just like 20% of the audience raised their hand, and one of the panelists didn't raise their hands. So we are getting to that level. So, and I love it because I don't know, you don't need to know who was Nikola Tesla or Thomas Alva Edison to use electricity. You just use it because it works. So I feel that we are in this moment for stablecoin adoption in an institutional level. And also personally, I think it was a I'm proud of everything that we did at Espacio Crypto and Bando, throwing the final party with Bridge, Privy, VIP dinner with like really high signal people. So I think it's been one of the best crypto events I've ever been, regardless of it if it's in Latin America, Denver, France, Belgium. It was super high signal. And Simon, I would love to hear about right now in the batch of Alliance. I saw that Kiao posted something like the easiest way to spend stablecoins is Rain, and they just announced like a $50+ million raise. And in the batch that you have right now, you have a bunch of stablecoin companies. So how do you see this fitting? Like this conference, regardless that you were not here, like everything that we're saying about institutional adoption and the startups that are going right now through the Alliance cohort.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, first of all, I'm impressed that there's institutional interest, and maybe later after I answer your question, you can tell me a little bit more about that, because you even like in the previous podcast shared that like for you, when you talk to VCs in general in Latin America, they just don't get it, right? And then a lot of the institutions, at least from my personal experience, they're just very very TradFi, very close-minded, and almost a lot of the times hold the cards in their hands. And so for me as a founder, I was usually like treading carefully with these people. So I would love to like learn, like understand your perspective on like how has that changed in this conference. From to answer your question, I think twofold. Like I personally, I do believe, and unfortunately, that the incumbents have so much power and so much leverage that I think that it's going to be really hard for startups to win the global game, because the stablecoins are fairly straightforward and fairly simple. And players like Stripe being an incumbent, I would put it in that category already, just have insane amount of power, insane amount of businesses and merchants using their products to acquire companies when they're younger, like they did with Bridge, and now I think with Privy as well. I know Privy was Coinbase, was Privy as
No,
well.
yeah. Preview was Stripe, yes.
Privy as well, yeah. Coinbase acquired a bunch of others as well. So yeah, I think these big companies like have this like huge leverage, and if that's the case with Stripe, I would say that maybe potentially the case going to be with like when banks want to like get into this game and like or like, you know, the Robinhoods of the world and the Venmos of the world and the Revoluts, they're already doing that. So the new banks of the world, like highly implementing stablecoin, it's just like, if Nubank or like, you know, in Colombia, like all these huge banks are offering stablecoins, like why would I use like, you know, any app for doing that? And so it's just something to think about. I've been thinking about it more recently. It's like, and it's sad for me because like I generally want the startups to win, and I would rather see things change. But at Alliance, we keep on funding the startups. We still believe in it. Rain, as you said, basically they are the back end that allows companies that are offering Visa cards to spend their crypto. So if you're a startup and you wanna, you know, you wanna have a stablecoin neobank or a stablecoin app, and you want to give the power to your users to spend that through a card, a digital card or a physical card, Rain gives you all that infrastructure ready to go, and it simplifies it, right? And they've been doing really well, and a lot of their customers, their B2B, are actually Latin American companies,
Yeah.
and so that's been really interesting. And in our batch, yeah, we have a solid amount of stablecoin startups as well. So yeah, this just supports the current trends. This is basically the meta right now. Like everybody is trying to build stablecoin products. Yeah.
What I see is that in the near future, I think that there's gonna be a couple of really big challengers, but just a couple. Maybe I'm not even sure if Rain's gonna be one of those, because if I were Visa, I would just acquire Rain for like, I don't know, one point. If they paid 1.1 billion for Bridge, they can pay 1.7 for Rain, and then like Visa, it's plugged to stablecoins like this. And actually, that'll be super cool. I love the Rain team; they're amazing. And on the other side, I think that a lot of acquisitions are going to happen. And obviously, one of the key messages that I have of the stablecoin conference, and I'd love to hear what you think, Kush, it feels bubbly. It starts to feel bubbly, which is exciting. Bubbles are not bad. Bubbles always push adoption and push technology building, but it starts to feel a little bit bubbly. I don't want to jinx it, but it's just how it feels.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. There's so much. Firstly, on the institutional adoption question that you brought up, Simon, I was on a panel with BVNK, Hedera, Avalanche, and QED investors, and one of the key takeaways from that was at some point Coca-Cola is going to be moving all of its finances on chain, right? And so who's going to be the company that is the infrastructure in order for that to happen? And for founders to start thinking about how do they position themselves to be those service providers, right? And how that happens, right? Is it that, you know, maybe it's just the Visas and the MasterCards verticalize and offer those services? That'll be interesting. I do think that M&A in this specific market will be really hot, given that there's a massive sort of both. I feel like it's mainly like a tech arbitrage, frankly. Bridge is interesting in that it, creates a very seamless onboarding experience into crypto. Rain as well, right? It's all about how do we get people as fast and as seamlessly on and off chain. And I think that that's where Bridge did really well. I think Rain's thriving as well. On the Toppy point, my perception is that I don't know if we are in like in a stablecoin top actually, because I think we were talking about this right up. We had a podcast interview with the Brazil crypto dude.
I didn't say top. It just feels
Or
bubbly.
bubbly, yeah.
Like it's like lukewarm. It's starting to bubble.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, I just think like all the world's money is going to come on chain, and I think that that's like so much capital that needs to shift. I think it's more so maybe it's starting to bubble, right? Maybe we're just seeing the first little bubbles kind of emerge. But I'm actually like, if there's anything that I'd be bullish on at this point, among a series of things, but I do feel like one of the key kind of implementations that'll be really exciting is payments and bringing all the world's money on chain, right? I think that category will win.
Yeah. Something that I wanna what you were asking, Simon, on these institutions looking at stablecoins. I just know after 10 years of building, maybe 7 years ago, I would be like, oh, that's happening. It's super exciting. It's really like the next wave. Right now, I'd say that I really love the essay. Have you read the essay of Mark Andreessen of the Moby Dick theory of big companies? Have you read it?
I think I did a long time ago.
It's really good, and I really recommend everyone reading it. Basically, what it says is that big companies, incumbents, are like Moby Dick. Moby Dick Moby Dick doesn't care about the captain. Moby Dick cares about other whales. So when a startup comes and says like Coca-Cola, like move your treasury here, they would say like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. They would say like, let's invest a lot, let's do it. We'll invest a couple $1 million, and then they would go radio silent for 6 months, right? And that's the natural way of enterprise implementation. So as a founder, you need to understand that and do not chase Moby Dick until you are like hooked to it. Once they have your technology, then you go all in. But if you have in your pitch deck like, oh, we have an LOI from Coca-Cola and I don't know, PepsiCo and which other random company, it's kind of useless. So that's why I feel like there's a combination of factors that make me feel like we are in a not a stablecoin bubble. That sounds terrible, but it's bubbly. And what does bubble mean? It means that there's a lot of deployment of capital and that's a lot of excitement around something. Afterwards, like valuations go down, fundraise go down, but technology keeps improving. So that's how I feel it. And I think that in the upcoming couple of months and maybe for the rest of the year, stablecoins are gonna keep pushing. Emerging markets are gonna keep pushing, and we're gonna see maybe a couple of more acquisitions, and it's gonna be super exciting. And I think that this is a great segue to chat about the Chainalysis report, the preview that was released this just recently, and some interesting topics. Last year, Latin America in this report was the region that was growing faster. And this year is Asia Pacific. And that's right on in our thesis of frontier markets and frontier technologies, not just uh, not just Latin America. So, Simon, I know that you took a look at like a deep look into this preview. What are your like your key takeaways, like as an investor, as a crypto builder?
Yeah. So well, it's pretty interesting, by the way. Like one of the things that you can see in the report, maybe if you pull it up, you can even like go scroll down to this graph. But like the adoption, even in the past years, has just been up and to the right. It just continues to grow. It's not variable. Like there's very little spikes in it, and there, and so it's like even from 2023, right? And we've been, crypto and like stablecoins have been hot even since 2023. Like, it's been a while. Like obviously now it's even more with like the United States being crypto friendly and like the Genius Act and all of that. But that's just like very telling. And again, we already smashed Visa and Mastercards in terms of volumes a while ago, and it just continues in that path. Like I don't remember the exact number, but it's like more than trillions per month on transactions on USDT and USDC separately, which continue to dominate, by the way, USDC and USDT.
Yeah.
And especially with the Genius Act, by the way, I think USDT will continue to dominate because they have a lot of the product market fit outside of the United States. I don't know. I don't see how that changes in any way. The only way that that may change is that, like, I don't know, the United States Treasury starts to issue Treasury bills and bonds that only are redeemable through USDC, something like that. But I just don't see it. So that's also kind of like an important insight, something that we might want to discuss, because you have to still trust these companies that are
Yeah.
managing so much volume that they actually hold the reserves, which is the reserves. What's backing this is basically T-bills, and specifically USDT. They have what's backing Tether. They have gold, they have Bitcoin, they have treasuries of other countries. They just have a mix there. So I think that's also an important thing to look at. But most likely they're going to be more responsible with their reserves than like central banks. Like I'm sure like USDT and USDC are way more responsible with their reserves than like banks and central banks, which is something to note as well. And one thing I'll say at the end, something to discuss as well, is that like the number one country in terms of adoption is India, and then the United States became second. It clearly because of the regulations, but adjusted by population, one of the really cool things that we see here is that Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, Jordan, like Latvia, Montenegro, like Eastern Europe, and like basically all the countries surrounding Russia are the ones who have who are leading in crypto adoption, adjusted to population. That's very unique. Actually, I'm gonna shield a little bit. We invested in one of the startups that is basically focusing on remittances to that part of the world, specifically starting in Serbia. And these founders are amazing, and it just goes. It's like it's aligned with what we talked about in the last podcast, where like companies may focus in a small country like Panama. It's like there is opportunity to focus on like smaller economies, in this case like Eastern Europe or like and build companies that can have enough volume and enough product market fit to expand from there. So I just thought that part was very interesting. It completely changes when it's adjusted to population.
Also, Simon, I know that we know that you are the Bitcoiner friend of like this bunch. What do you think about this? Like fiat on ramping, Bitcoin remains the primary entry point. Because what do I want to say here? Because the stablecoin narrative is more about traditional payments. I was joking. I'm reading this book where they quote this founder funds investor letter that they say we were promised flying cars and we got 140 characters instead. So thinking about that in crypto, I thought about like we got promised sovereign money and we got a grab of US debt instead, right? But when we see this chart that Bitcoin is still the most important entry point by far, like stablecoins have a round of asset purchase with fiat currency, stablecoins $1 billion from July 2024 to June 2025, and Bitcoin is still 5 times that. So, what does this tell you in your Bitcoiner thesis of sovereign money as Bitcoin and fiat money as stablecoins?
For me, that tells me that there isn't enough companies and products offering savings in stablecoins with high yields. Because when that happens, when like the benefits of holding stablecoins on top of fiat are clear for like the average Joe, it's possible that we'll see a lot more flows from fiat directly to stablecoins, just for, as I mentioned, just to like get good interest rates, just to access to lend that money more effectively, which is in a similar way getting. But depending if you're a more savvy user, you could lend it specifically instead of just put it on one protocol or like one app that gives you the interest. Basically all the different DeFi, kind of the access to DeFi that can be accessed through stablecoins. Once that's more kind of available, which I think is going to happen with everything that we've discussed about the Genius Act and everything that will happen, it's likely that will change. For now, I wasn't surprised to see that, because if like fiat is basically, is going from the dollar to Bitcoin, right? And currently the biggest pair for Bitcoin is stable coins, by the way. So this is an interesting thing. Like Bitcoin has a higher volume from fiat than stable coins, but stablecoins to Bitcoin is still by far like the highest trading pair. So once people are on stablecoins, you have the highest trading pair there. So that's the only thing I'm reading from it. It's just that stablecoins in general are newer than Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the first crypto. It's it's gonna be hard to dethrone it for now. And yeah.
This is also another data point. Bitso posted this. The trading pairs, the preferred trading pairs in Mexico, 17% of the trading volume happens in Bitcoin MXN, 11% super randomly, or well, not randomly. This is a combination of factors that got XRP to have 11% versus MXN, then USDT, then BTC USD. So basically, this is data that proves everything that you were saying, Simon. And I think that also, for also in the stablecoin conference, there was Santi Roel, friend of the pod, and he said like, we just need to accept that the investment use case of crypto will stay forever, and let's embrace it. And this is proof of this. People in Mexico are buying more Bitcoin than stablecoins. So, and because Bitcoin is still the king in in as an asset, and maybe even as an asset class, it could be Bitcoin could be a specific asset class today.
I mean,
Also,
it definitely. Yeah,
go for it. Well, no, I was just gonna say that that probably means that the people who are trading in Mexico, and based on this data by Bitso, are people who are highly educated, wealthier. I wouldn't be surprised that they're not the bottom of the pyramid, and it just means that they actually have a clear understanding of value preservation. And because the United States dollar is through inflation, or sorry, to money printing and debasement, a specific type of money printing that has happened since 2008, by the way, money printing and the creation of base money, not in all ways is inflationary, but since 2008, the way that it has been created, it's inflationary for the United States and for the entire world. And so that means that even if you hold stable coins and you're getting 8% interest on your stable coins, who knows? You might not be beating inflation. Actually, I saw a podcast where Balaji is talking about this. If you just take the growth of Bitcoin compared to the US dollar since Bitcoin started, the inflation of the US dollar is about a little bit over 10% per month. And so, yeah, you just cannot beat it.
Crazy.
You cannot fucking beat it. That's it.
Yeah.
You need to hold Bitcoin.
I think the two items that stood out to me on that which currency should you hold. So I'm here with a bunch of Mexican friends, and they're saying we've been psyoped to think that the US dollar is what we should really be holding. But if you look at the performance of the peso over the course of the last few years,
5 years,
actually, it would behoove you to hold pesos over dollars, right? But again, there's just been this general psyop that you should really be holding dollars above all else. I think the other piece that's interesting, if you go back to the Chainalysis report, is when we look at the graph of what region is growing rapidly, sort of change in growth over the course from 2024 to 2025. So what I found interesting here was if we look at the growth rate, APAC growing massively, Latin America also growing.
Go Kush, give us your LatAm long take.
Well, it's just it's generally just emerging market long take, right? Whereas if you look at Europe, MENA is generally I think perhaps there's some relationship there with the yuan, or generally a stronger kind of pairing there, and Europe obviously too. It's just interesting to observe the trend of difference in growth rates, right? So I think if you want to be forward looking as well, I think this is probably one of the more interesting charts.
Yeah, dude. So this tells you a lot of international markets and crypto markets today. Take a look at this. So the growth rate of APAC 2025 was around 70%. 2024 was 30%. Still, Latin America, if you do the compounding of last year and this year, 2025 is around of 65%, and last year 55%. That compounding is huge. So the key message of APAC is the fastest growing region this year. But if you do the compounding, Latin America is long LatAm, right? Then Sub-Saharan Africa grew from 25% to more than 50% this year. And the only region that grew less than last year is Europe. And that's completely aligned with international markets today. Basically, doing business in Europe is almost impossible. Simon, you're moving from Europe maybe because of that. I moved from Europe because of that. And it's really exciting to see that frontier markets lead crypto today. And yeah, that's why we do this pod. So great take, Kush. And let's move on to the final element in the docket, and is that this news. Binance bought Meda, that basically they bought a company that have a license in Mexico that enables them to operate with Mexican pesos on and off ramps. And they are investing $53 million in Mexico over the next 4 years. So this is the largest crypto exchange in the world, investing a huge amount of money in the region. And I just want to hear your takes, specifically starting with you, Kush, because you were here in the stablecoin conference. Bitso is holding the narrative. Why do you think that Binance is investing this amount and this energy in specifically in Mexico?
Yeah, if you look at the only real competitor to Bitso in Mexico is Binance, and I think the ETH license is a massive unlock. I think Bitso is really trying to push the narrative of, hey, you don't need to worry about ETH, just use MXNB, which is their local stablecoin. But I think ultimately this is a power move by Binance. Like, I haven't seen them mobilize this level of resources elsewhere in the region and in such a concentrated fashion. Meda is essentially going to be operating, according to the press release, somewhat independently. Ultimately, again, it's figuring out what that on and off ramping unlock will be, and I think the ETH license essentially gives me that license. I'm actually I've been thinking a lot about the Rain example, and I think the off ramping is pretty straightforward these days, especially with card issuers. I think the getting money into crypto is perhaps a little bit harder for the time being, but I think obviously Rain will be trying to tackle this. So I'm curious how much it really matters to send money in and out of banks, because I actually think there's a world where we just bypass banking entirely, and on and off ramping matters less and less every day. How do you think about this, Ab? I know you have sort of a lot of networks as well, and these different, both with Bitso and the Binance relationship and so forth. I'd love to hear more of how you're perceiving this.
Well, this is super exciting because competition, long competition, right? One thing that I found interesting, this is a random thing that I do frequently. I go into the App Store of finances in Mexico and see where are located Bitso and Binance. And for the last 12 months, Binance was always above Bitso in downloads. And just in this, after this announcement and after the stablecoin conference, for the first time in a long time, Bitso is ahead of Binance in downloads, which I attribute this to the stablecoin conference and all the hype that's been happening lately. But yesterday, Bitso was in position 40. Today, they are in the position 52 in the App Store. And Binance right now is 54. So just 2 positions away from Bitso. So it seems like they are closing the gap again. And this was a flash download, I think, for Bitso. And how I see this is that, my personal opinion is that for retail, neither of these 2 products are perfect for Mexico, because Bitso is really focused on stablecoins and Binance is really focused on advanced crypto trading. And dude, Mexicans want CETES, gold, and Bitcoin. How do you enable that? And that's a big opportunity in the market. For example, in Argentina, I know that Binance and the market leaders are Lemon, and they are local. In Venezuela, El Dorado before everything that happened, and there's now a lot of competition. So Mexico is a huge market, and I think that there's an opportunity and a space for another local competitor to challenge this. Simon, in Alliance, have you seen this, like, any thesis about this? Like, any Mexicans trying to apply and build a Bitso Binance competitor?
A few, yeah, we've met a few in the past. Not a Bitso Binance competitor per se, but a lot of people trying to build mostly like consumer apps that work for the average Mexican, for the lower income Mexican, where they understand their on and off ramp needs, which are potentially way different than like the higher income Mexican who can potentially open an account in Bitso and then go through Bitso and then send it somewhere else. Like they just figure it out, right? Like I guess like a lot of the consumer apps that are trying to be built are like simple to use, and in many cases self-custodial, like using Privy and using these type of things, which I think is exciting. And so yeah, we've seen it. We just haven't found the right set of founders, especially in the Mexican market. And so, but I think, yeah, it'll definitely happen. There is space for that still, but I do think there are there's a bunch of people, like, from just empirically, I've spoken and I've heard so many people trying to work on this. It's just hard to get to the point where you can be compared to like Binance and Bitso, I would say, potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I've seen is that the regulatory mode is closing, well, opening, in a sense that Bitso had a regulatory mode for years. Now Binance with Meda breaks that, and also different projects like Etherfuse enable different ways to do on and off ramps. So competition is gonna get super interesting. And guys, let's close the episode with some news. And Simon, I'd love to get your take here because you're from Venezuela. And this week, talking of frontier markets and even how like macroeconomic and international relations impact the crypto market. This week, the US attacked like a boat that was supposed to be filled with drugs in the Venezuela, like in Venezuelan territory. So the news is that Trump strikes Maduro slams as a military threat of Venezuela. Can you tell us about this story? What's the people in Venezuela talking about it?
Yeah, I mean, everybody that left Venezuela is super excited because, yeah, I mean, honestly, I personally think, and I've been, also spending quite amount of time thinking about this problem and looking at history and countries that have been through similar situations, like how they have gone through like solving it. And the reality is that I initially thought that the United intervention from the United States was net negative for us because it would essentially incentivize Russia and China to use Venezuela as another playground, as another war playground. Because if you're playing chess and you basically have only 3 chess players in the world, which are these 3 military powers, once one of them says, "Okay, let me play with this territory," other ones are just going to be forced naturally to play with that territory. And so I was like, damn, that would not be good, obviously, because then we will end up like Syria or any of these other places that have been invaded by these 3 powers. And then I started looking at like different examples of other countries that have been through similar situations, like Poland and others, and how they basically, like, it was the people themselves who got to a certain point where they actually just like, it was almost like a civil unrest, and they took over power. They got in front of the military and they won, despite the fact that thousands of people, hundreds or thousands of people died in the process. And Venezuela hasn't gone through that, right? So, and I thought like maybe that's what needs to happen. Venezuela needs to get to that boiling point, but it's been 25 years and it hasn't happened, and everybody has left. And it's like the people that are there doesn't seem like have that like thing, like that boiling thing in its veins, to just kind of like say, okay, we're gonna die fighting for our country, and even if we die, we're just gonna like self-organize and take over the country. And so that means that we're basically left with like no other option. Like, there's many other options in the board, and I've analyzed a lot of them. And now I'm just like, man, maybe if there is some sort of like alignment between like the United States and like China and Russia. And the United States is saying like, hey guys, we're gonna do this. We're gonna go into Venezuela. They're close to us. Don't mess with us. The same way that Russia got into Ukraine, unfortunately. Maybe the United States can intervene in Venezuela without other powers getting into it. I doubt it, but it will be interesting. A lot of people are really excited about it, maybe naively. But yeah, these things are interesting. Like a lot of people have dreamed with this for a long time. Not me, but as I mentioned, I just don't know what is the solution because it doesn't seem like Venezuelans can get out of this by themselves.
Simon, how much of a likelihood do you think there is that there was conversation around Venezuela at the Alaska 2025 summit that Trump and Putin had? Because it feels like, look, we're willing to concede part of the Ukraine because it was shortly thereafter that there was military advances in Venezuela from the US. So how much do you think that was discussed at the summit, and what role do you think that plays to that point specifically?
I think that's my hypothesis. That's exactly that's then they have like negotiation cards, right? They need like different types of leverage. And I think that's potentially what's happening. They're basically dividing themselves territory at this point. They're like, okay, we're not gonna fight each other, but we're gonna divide the world and we're gonna just take it over. And it's likely, man. Like I wouldn't be surprised. And then maybe China's gonna play that card with Vietnam, not Vietnam,
Taiwan.
with Taiwan. And so we'll see what happens. Venezuela is just to kind of like give some context. It's country that is still very rich in terms of resources. And it's a very unique geographic location at the north of South America, close to the United States. It's so rich in terms of resources, in terms of petroleum, that like, and in terms of gold, and in terms of other like minerals that companies like Apple use, that kind of everybody wants it. And so I'd be surprised the United States wants to like do something about it.
Yeah. Well, international geopolitics right now in Frontera, I think that this is interesting because it shakes global markets, it shakes frontier markets, and it also builds up on the thesis of how does the US maintain like global dominance through the dollar and through the military, right? So those things are really tied up. And guys, thank you for another great episode. Well, see you next week. We're adjusting this type of episodes to have one killer episode a week. So one killer guest a week, one killer roundup. So thank you for everything. You can find Simone next at Simon Builds. You can find Kush at 0x Kush. You can find me at Abraham CR. And as always, thank you and see you next time. Take care, guys.
Ciao.